Donna, this is a debate that seems to never go away. Should the city of St. Louis and St. Louis County merge? Some people say yes, some people say no. You're now saying yes. Why?
Well, first of all, I use different terminology. First of all, mutual cooperation is a key word, because anytime you say merge, you immediately turn everyone against everyone. So in 2018, some people may or may not know, I wrote an article about making us one county instead of putting the city and the county merging in any way, shape, or form, rather than us becoming one county like they did in Kansas City. They have what's called Jackson County, and Jackson County includes all of Kansas City proper, downtown, and all the burbs. And when they go to apply for federal funds, they get it based on the population of the combined region. We can't even apply for those funds because the city and the county, our population isn't high enough. Combined, we would at least get more money, federal money, coming into our area.
So I want to go into the funding, but first, the urgency. You've tied this to real-life events, May 16th tornado, for example. I know that there are some other regional challenges that you feel like this would help things out. Why the urgency now to bring up this conversation?
I don't think it's so much an urgency as in we stopped talking about it. And I say it that way because every 5 years we get a new influx of younger people that come into our area. We don't want to lose them again, because that's usually what happens. They come here, they're like, this is great, and then they say, what is wrong with you people? Why are you separated? Why do you fight so much? And so it turns the younger people off. In order to grow our population, we have to have more of the younger professionals want to stay in our city. And I think that's why we need to talk about mutual cooperation, whether it's public safety, whether it is health department. When I talk about the airport, I talk about it's a regional asset. It is the most important asset to every part of our region, not just the city.
I think when people hear this concept of mutual cooperation or merging, you start doing the math. Well, that's 80-something police departments. It's 80-something fire departments. How do you consolidate? Would you just wake up the next day and it would all just say St. Louis Fire Department on all those buildings? Is that how that would look?
Oh, absolutely not. No. What I wrote about was all the municipalities would stay the same. St. Louis would just become another municipality, but we'd all be under one county. So it could be St. Louis County, or we could rename it because it'll go river to river, Lewis and Clark County. But at the end of the day, if we become one county, then we can start looking at those mutual cooperations that we can work out together. And they already exist. People don't realize. If the fire department in Shrewsbury can't get to a fire call, the City of St. Louis Fire Department shows up. So we do already do it with some municipalities that we touch with.
But doesn't that still keep that fragmentation that plagues the region if you still have all these municipalities with their own police, with their own fire? I mean, just between St. Louis County and the city, you have two different health departments that seem to be working simultaneously. Should that redundancy go away?
It would organically go away. It's not something you say has to go away. I think it would organically go away. And the reason I say it like that is because I believed in the St. Louis Economic Development Partnership, which is basically putting SLDC and St. Louis County together. And that's been going quite a long time, 15 years. And I tell people, I said, it can work out. It's just a matter of don't force it on people. That's number one. Explain why you want to do it. And if you're doing it for all the right reasons, not for any, I'm not trying to hold on to my role here, but rather, how is this going to look for me, my grandchildren? I want them to know that this is going to be a great place to live and raise your kids.
You talked about how this could grow the tax base, how it could help with that federal funding. Can you just walk me through that process of how exactly this collaboration would put money on people's table?
So Kansas City, when they applied for federal funds, they applied for $200 million that were a match from the state. So they ended up getting $400 million, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. And that was to build their new airport and to build a hospital. Those funds are not available to us because we don't have that population. So we would start going after funds, especially when it comes to the airport or it comes to transportation, that we can't apply for now. So that is how it will help our region. And I think there's another thing. When I was in Jefferson City, myself and Representative Shamet Dogan, we actually had a piece of legislation that would make the St. Louis Public School Special School District allow St. Louis City to come into it. And then I was going to introduce a legislation where asking the citizens of the city of St. Louis, would you pay the increased tax fee so that we could have a special school district? Because the city of St. Louis does not have special schools, but we would have loved to have been in the St. Louis County Special School District. When you have the topic of a merger coming up, sometimes we get defensive, sometimes people view that as, well, they think of maybe bureaucracy or like a loss of control.
what's broken in the current structure?
Broken is in why we need to be together,
Yes.
work together, cooperate together. I think there's nothing broken. I think what's happened is the demographics keep shrinking. And you have to say to yourself, why do they keep shrinking? And people are very clear about what's important to them, and it doesn't matter. This is not just a city issue and not just a county issue. When we talk about public safety, when we talk about the schools, and we talk about homelessness, people don't realize the homeless in the city of St. Louis, more than half of them aren't even from our region. So it's not saying you don't want to take care of them, but it's putting an undue hardship on the city of St. Louis to be taking care of people who should go back to the area they came from, but for reasons we don't know, maybe it's economical, or in some instances in the city, they just got dropped off in the city.
Where would you see this, though, benefiting the city? Because I think in my time back, you see maybe redundancies in the system. I mean, some people ask why the city of St. Louis needs a comptroller and a treasurer. You have experience as an alderperson, you've worked at the state level, you're back as comptroller. What are the redundancies you see in the city where they would benefit from this collaboration?
Well, I can tell you when it comes to policing, there are times that there aren't enough police available in the city of St. Louis. It has more to do with the stress of having to, and I don't mean stress as a negative, but as in when you're stretched too thin, you don't have enough police officers. Because let's say you have a parade like Mardi Gras, and something happens, that we would have the mutual cooperation that the county police could come in and help us. And that's one of the ways. The other thing was there was actual incident where they called for an ambulance in the city and we had no ambulances available. It would have been nice if we'd been able to get an ambulance that could have come from a closer municipality that was available. So that's cooperation we don't have right now.
I think if we're being really honest, this idea of merging or this collaboration that you're talking about, it's the same thing. We're just putting two different labels on it, really. But there was real momentum before. I think if Steve Stenger doesn't get indicted, we probably have this already happening. But if we're real with ourselves, this idea has failed in the past as far as getting the momentum. County residents especially seem very skeptical on this issue. So I'm kind of curious, what do you say to someone who thinks that if St. Louis City and county became one, what would you say to that person who fears that would hurt their community? Well,
first of all, it's not as simple. Stenger could not have done it, so that wouldn't have happened because he was in office. The first thing that has to happen, and I asked for it, I put the bill in Jeff City that asked for the St. Louis County Executive and the St. Louis City Mayor to put together the Board of Freeholders. The city charter and the county charter very clearly state you cannot even discuss this without having a meeting from the Board of Freeholders that would allow us to discuss it. So that has to be put together by the county executive, and they pick their people, and that did happen under Page. But then the mayor couldn't get the Board of Aldermen to agree to their picks for the Board of Freeholders. That's what ended it there. Without that Board of Freeholders agreeing to allow us to have a meeting to discuss any of this together, it can't happen because our charters do not allow it.
But what do you say to the person who's afraid that if they became one, it would damage their community? The person in Crestwood right now who maybe doesn't want to see a merger, or the person living in Webster or Florissant, you name the municipality, but they're afraid that a merger would harm their way of life.
I don't think you should look at it that way at all. You have to look at what do you have and what are you struggling with. Everybody has something different. All our neighborhoods are unique. So is St. Louis County. What people don't realize in St. Louis County, we talk about St. Louis County government, it only has full control over the areas that are unincorporated. So there's the areas that are unincorporated don't even have their own police force. They don't even have their own ambulance force. And so I tell people, I said, those areas aren't 100% covered by St. Louis County because Webster Groves has their own police department. So what I'm trying to say is nothing is perfect. We all have our strengths and weaknesses. And what can we bring to the table to raise everything for all of us?
You're vocal about this, but what are others people's... let me rephrase that.
It's okay.
You're being vocal about this. What are others saying? Have you talked to Mayor Spencer about this? What's she saying?
I've not had a chance to talk to Mayor Spencer about this. I would think that anyone who read the article I wrote, Becoming One County, I had no one send in a negative letter about it. There were no negative responses about it. It was all positive, and it was positive from someone who lived all the way out in Eureka, and it was positive from someone who lives in the city.
This was an article that you wrote in 2018?
2018.
Are you having any active conversations right now with someone in St. Louis County, with the mayor's administration?
No. Right now, I'm focused on the airport. And that is my number one goal, is to make sure that we get this new terminal done and done right.
Before I ask you about that, though, I guess moving forward, do we need to have that sit-down interview you're talking about? As far as what needs to happen now for merger talks to progress, what needs to happen?
St. Louis County Executive and the St. Louis City Mayor have to get together a board of freeholders. Then the board of freeholders have to meet, and then they have to mutually agree that this is okay, let's move forward with it. Because that's what our charter says. The only way to override that would be to take it to a vote of all the people in the state of Missouri, and we don't want that. Let's make our own decisions.
And you think these two sides should come together?
Absolutely, they should talk.